Hey guys, Masochist here, and I seem to have finally found the one remote area of Orange County that's actually quiet enough to record. This is why homeless people don't usually have YouTube channels. So after a very adventurous season, which was built around trying to attempt a southbound CDT, I am back in Orange County. So if you haven't been following along with my videos, basically on June 5th, Jen and I went to Glacier National Park and started hiking south with the intention to go the entire way on the Continental Divide Trail from monument to monument, largely sticking to the red line. Everything went relatively well all the way through Montana, the Idaho border, Wyoming, and into Colorado. Unfortunately, on September 8th, I entered Colorado, and then on the 20th, I came down with this weird cough, which turned into full-blown COVID. I ended up going into town for a couple of days, having to leave town because it was too expensive to try and hole up in Winter Park till I was better. Trying to stay at the trailhead, got worse after about 3 days because it was up at 12,000 feet, cold, etc., etc. Going back into town, staying at a different dive hostel sort of place, and then finally getting moving again 10 days later. At that point, I was able to continue hiking until October 11th. I wasn't great. My lungs were really bothering me at the end of the day, but I was making progress, having a grand old time. And then on October 11th, I had norovirus. Vomiting, diarrhea, really, really bad. Went back into town for 3 days to get cleaned up. Tried to go back to the trail. I've had noro before. That's usually how long it takes me to recover. And I was basically so weak. I had been doing, 30 miles in the basin a day. I had been doing, 20 in Colorado in places, and I was struggling to make 6 after the whole noro thing. So after that, I ended up coming off trail again on the 17th and going back to my parents and basically trying to wait it out, determined to finish because I was still within my window to be able to reach the Southern Monument. I wasn't going to be able to do the San Juans, but everything else I should have been fine on. And I never recovered. I was far too weak. I hung around their place for about 2 weeks, and even right before I gave up and I drove home, I went out for just a day hike out behind, and I was so weak. Even without a pack, I was just gasping and having to rest going up the slightest hill. It basically took me a month and a half or so until I was anywhere back in reasonable shape, and there's still kind of a question mark of what permanent effects I'm suffering from. Ever since then, I've really had issues with my toes getting cold. My hands too, to a lesser extent, but really my feet. I mean, I'm sitting here wearing knockoff Uggs when I used to be like, a flip-flop and a light shoe sort of guy all the time. So that's kind of still developing. When Jen and I went out and we did the Swanee River paddle over Christmas, that became the true struggle, just trying to keep my feet from just being frozen. It's not the sort of complication I would have preferred, but hey, what you gonna do? All in all, I did about 2/3 of the CDT, about 1,900 miles. I went from the Canadian border to a little bit south of Salida. It took me from June 5th until October 17th was when I finally came off. And overall, it went pretty good. I was actually really happy with where I was right up into the point where COVID set me back. And that's not really something I could control. I had minimal exposure, but minimal is not zero, and that stuff can just hit you. I did have to hitch into town on occasion, and I had contact with the occasional trail angel. I have no idea where I got it, but all I can say is I was lucky through the PCT and the AT. I never got it, and I felt relatively secure, other than a particular hostel on the AT that they had an outbreak that they weren't sharing about when I was there. But other than that, I feel like I've kind of made it through all this fairly unscathed. So I guess it's got to catch up with you sometime, huh? So since I have been back, quite frankly, this is my third transition coming back from a big trail, and this has been probably the roughest of them. Partially that was coming back and it was just being sick. I couldn't jump right back into the other activities like I normally do. Normally I'm on a high coming back from a trip. Happy to see Jen, happy to get back, get in the water, see other friends, things like that. This time it was both, the feeling that my trip hadn't been successful and those activities just weren't available to me. It really wasn't until the Black Canyon trip that I was able to actually, get out and do something and start to feel like, oh, okay, hey, maybe I'm actually able to still do this stuff. In addition, we have had a lot of rain out here in California, which unfortunately, due to runoff issues, that means whenever it's been raining for a couple of days, you can't go out and dive. When it hasn't been raining, like right now, it's sunny. Conditions have been horrible. So one of the major activities I look forward to when I come off trail has not been available to me this time around. I still have hope. It's only February. I don't leave for another month and change. I'm hoping that I can get in the water a bit before I'm off on this year's adventures. Also, it's just been hard because the rain has kept me inside. That means inside of our van dealing with leaks and things. We've been, due to some financial stuff, we've been trying to kind of limit expenditures, and that means not driving around as much, aka I end up hanging around the campground a lot. And the campgrounds have not quite been as ideal this year. Sometimes it's great living in campgrounds. I mean, Jen and I both like camping, so when they're nice, they're nice. But there seems to have been a real rash of obnoxious people, you know, showing up and just blaring music so loud that the entire campground is thudding. In some cases lasting until 2 o'clock in the morning, and they don't always have camp hosts, or, you know, the camp hosts won't always get involved. So as far as the CDT trip, I had an impression of the CDT going in, which was that it was wild, that it was unfinished, that it was going to be rough, things like that. I was expecting not much in the way of crowds, and I thought there were going to be some kind of like significant road walks. So what did I think when I actually went out there and got hiking? I did like it. I've said many times that while I had fun on the AT, that wasn't quite my scene, and that I was looking forward to a much more remote trail. I'd also heard a lot about how there wasn't just a red line, it was more of like a choose your own adventure trail. And when I got out there, I didn't find that was as much the case. Reading like Yogi's old guidebook and some of those, it kind of gave that impression like, oh yeah, you get here and you can go here, or you can go here. What I actually found once I was on the trail was it was more like, well, there's a red line and it goes over here, it stays in the dirt. Or you can shortcut 10 miles by walking on a road over here. And there were, I would say the majority of the people that I was running into out there were taking pretty much every shortcut possible. The CDT is generally quoted as being 3,100 miles. I know people that say they managed to get from monument to monument in 2,200 miles, aka they turned it into the same length as the AT. Now, they saw a lot more pavement than I did, but you know, hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. Some of those sections were, you know, hard when I was on the trail versus going on the road. Others were just spectacularly beautiful, and I was walking them going, oh my God, why are people like shortcutting this? This is really awesome. The first of those big ones is, of course, the Butte Anaconda, where Anaconda basically cuts straight across on a road walk, or you can do a big loop that takes a couple of days. Jen and I did Butte, had a really great time. It's a wonderful trail, like rolling, bouldery hills with trees. You know, it's basically the reason we were out there, other than the Butte 100 bike race. And you also have the things like Super Butte, where you cut from, you know, Butte straight down to Yellowstone and you miss the entire Idaho border. It still just seems crazy to me that this is a long trail where some big percentage of people who have done the CDT have not actually seen the state of Idaho. But, you know, again, people do what they do. As a part of that, there were actually way less roadwalks than I expected. A lot of that was, you know, just from following friends and whatnot on social media, and you'd see them doing these big roadwalks. And it turns out that, yeah, those were the shortcuts. I mean, if you want to, you know, skip the mountains on the northern part of Colorado and just walk a highway to get all the way up into Butte, you can do that. And I will do that on other trails. I'm currently planning the American Discovery Trail, but you know, when I was out on a trail like that, if I have the choice of doing the red line, doing the trail versus walking on a road, I was doing the trail. Now that does make it a much bigger challenge timing wise. The weather window for the PCT, traditionally, you know, ignore the fire risk, which is a whole other thing, has been pretty wide open. The AT is a very reasonable weather window. The CDT is a challenge. Even if you're in good shape, even if you do everything right, you really have to push it to make it through. What I found is that I wanted to do as much of the trail as possible. It was very doable starting, you know, June 5th going south. That was basically right when the snow was melting in glacier. I just needed to make up time somehow. Now, my solution for that is I didn't stop at every trail town. I stopped at every 2 or 3 trail towns. I stopped when I actually needed. My average food carry on this one was 5 or 6 days. The longest period we went between towns when Jen was with me was 18 days. Now, we had some backcountry food drops where we were able to resupply. But there were a lot of places like encampment and whatnot that I just didn't go into because I didn't need to. And it takes time, especially when you have to jump off the trail. Going through the winds, I had a 7 or 8 day food carry. It was heavy and it was rough. But the people who were going into town there, I mean, you're talking like a 13-mile each way hike out to go into town and come back. And if I'm ever given that choice, I will just carry some extra food and go through. Especially, you know, it's like the Sierra, that long carry out of Kennedy Meadows up to Mammoth sort of area. You're in this beautiful part. The last thing I want to do is go out and have to hitch and deal with that just to save, you know, carrying an extra few days of food. So while there were less road walks than I expected, there were some, mostly like dirt roads, and it was kind of like coming out of the mountains, going through some dirt roads, going back in. There were more cow fields than I expected. Now, don't get me wrong, I've hiked through my share of cow fields, and that wasn't like a deal breaker or anything, but there were a lot of cow fields on this. Plus side, that meant there were cow troughs, and in some of those areas, like along the Idaho border, those are your water sources. Now, you may be going, oh, cow water. Honestly, the smell and the cow poop everywhere is the worst part. The water itself is usually coming out of a pipe. So I still filter it, but it was relatively clean. Almost all the water sources that I used on the CDT were pretty good. I don't think there was anything that I would actually say was questionable, other than a couple of times where the springs had been fouled and I had to be kind of selective. You know, you don't want to gather your water coming off of a pile of cow diarrhea, unless that's your thing, because, you know, you do you. I was also expecting to be like nobody out there. Now, hiking trails are getting more and more popular, so obviously as the AT and the PCT have a whole bunch of crowds, you're going to start seeing more and more people on something like the CDT. I was still kind of shocked going to Glacier. There's a hostel there run by some awesome people. It's a cool setup, great prices. I mean, you can get a cabin there for $50. However, there was a really big crowd when we were there. Like, I was starting to have flashbacks of the AT going, I thought I was past this. So it was, you know, in some ways it was neat because I got to meet a lot of people, and that's always fun. Got to meet some people from previous trails, stuff like that, mutual friends. But I went in there and it's like, oh, okay, there's, you know, 5 or 6 other hikers. I'm chatting with people, getting to know folks. And then by the end of the day, there was like 30 and I'm like, get me out of here. So we only stayed the one night and then we took off like a shot. As a part of that, it really did feel kind of like AT culture because I was talking to others and people were, you know, like slack packing sections and things like that. Which that's basically where you just carry a day pack and you hike something and you get picked up back and brought back to the hostel at the end of the day. And very, very popular with a lot of people. It's not my thing because to me, the, you know, core of through hiking is getting out there. I've got everything I need on my back and I'm just going and I'm not dependent on other things. So that was a shock. And also, like I said, just how much everybody was shortcutting. And I almost feel bad for the CDT trail builders because like they're working actively to try and get everybody off roads have the CDT BXYZ. And then they have sections where there's nice single track going through like remote mountains and stuff like that. And it felt like over 3/4 of people were not doing that and were instead sticking on roads and other things, calling every hill they had to go up over, you know, pointless ups and downs. And again, they should do whatever they want to do. But to me, you know, that's why I'm out there. It's kind of ridiculous. My favorite one was there was like a 5-mile section that went up some relatively easy hills. I mean, come on, you're on the divide. What do you expect? And there were comments on Far Out of people saying, oh yeah, don't go up over that and instead take this lower route. You've got to jump over 2 fences and there's some no trespassing signs and you'll see like the back of a house, but I was able to make it through. It's like, really? To just save a couple of miles in little hills? As always, it is hard to say what my favorite part of the CDT was. You know, there's the usual high points people talk about, like Glacier. I tend to like the overall experience. I like being out there. I like being out there in a sustained manner. So to me, it's really those kind of like remote spots. Like I think the Bob Marshall Wilderness, if anything, made the biggest impression. Just because we did have that 18-day section without having to screw with getting into town, getting out of town, hitching, anything else like that. Now, it was the Devil's Stick Pile. The running joke was the Bob stood for blowdowns over blowdowns because we were just crawling over a massive number of downed trees all over the trail. Everybody was all like cut up and bloodied from that, but you know, on the plus side, it was nice out there. We also got hit by the most epic storm during that section. And it had the best feel, I think, of any of the sections. The other part I liked, which might just be my contrary nature, was the Montana-Idaho border. While people were complaining about, you know, dry Idaho, no water, stuff like that, you're up on this ridge line, you know, Montana on one side, Idaho on the other, with these kind of like deserty views, and that was really cool. But, I mean, so much of it was unique. Yes, the winds are pretty. Of course, everybody loves the winds. It was almost as pretty as the remote parts of the Sierra. There are people walking the track behind me, so I'm having to start and stop as people go by. So yes, I did enjoy the winds. I did do one of the big alternates everybody talked about, but in general, it was just nice out there. I also really liked the Basin, which was this long, you know, 30-mile days going across the desert, long water carries, things like that. That actually went a lot smoother than I'd feared. There was the usual thing where you look online about any trails or a lot of outdoor stuff in general. There's always people fear-mongering. On the PCT, for example, it was the aqueduct walk. You hear about, oh, the aqueduct's so bad, it's miserable, people run out of water, XYZ. It is 17 miles, dead flat. There's water at the start, there is water at the end. Yes, the water at the end is shut off sometimes, but you can see on far out if that exists. That's trivial. I also really enjoyed Colorado. Yes, it is the hardest part. It is the state that gives the, you know, embrace the brutality kind of tagline to the CDT. And I was there at, you know, end of September, early October, where I was starting to get snow, weather, things like that. But it was also cool because there were no crowds. I felt like I was the last person out on the trail. And especially as the trees and things, don't mind me, I'm just going to choke on a bug while I'm here, especially as the trees were changing, going over Silverthorn and things like that. Once I had to bail off of the 14ers, that just was absolutely spectacular. Part of me was worried that I was there so late, but and I was feeling so bad and dealing with the cold, but the other part of me was just every day feeling like, oh, it's so awesome to be out. This is the sort of thing I came out here for. So as far as the things that really worked for me, going southbound, I am still convinced with all my research and now from my experience that southbound is the way to go if you want to do an A to B complete trip on the CDT. If you're going to flip, do other things, then yeah, you can, you know, go do New Mexico, jump up, stuff like that. I don't have the energy for that. I like starting and walking. I like, you know, standing at one border, going all the way to the other border. And with my June start date being relatively aggressive on the pace, but I'm not the fastest hiker, you know, world's most okayish through hiker and all that, I would have finished. People who were around me going over, you know, when I was in Colorado, they were able to finish. Ideally, I would have been a week or two ahead of where I was just for the San Juans, but realistically, you know, stuff happens, schedules slip, and I was overall pretty happy with where I was. And like I said before, I was actually really happy with the whole plan of like redlining. I did do Spotted Bear and a few spots like that that looked interesting, but a lot of the places that people shortcutted, like, you know, Max Inn, I went over Targhee Pass, and that was one of the most memorable sections of the entire thing. I enjoyed Butte. Even some of the things where it's like, okay, you can walk this dirt road or else the trail's just gonna like wind back here. I like those little remote spots, you know, where the river's coming down and you're just kind of like walking up the river going by these, you know, less traveled areas. That's why I'm out there. And as a part of that, making up the time by skipping towns really worked for me. There's way too many stops, and I'm not a town person. Hey, trust me, I like town food. I like being in hotels, stuff like that. But it's the most expensive part of the trip. and it's so easy to lose time. People joke about vortexing. I generally don't have that problem, just because for me, once I've been going about a week or two, I start to get this kind of tempo going, where if I'm sitting still longer than a day, I start to get really antsy, even when I'm dead tired. Like, look at me in the northern part of the AT, where every day I was tired and I was joking about, what do I not want to do today? Hike. What am I going to do today? Hike. If I got a chance to take a break, it's fighting against that kind of innate sense of got to make progress, got to make progress. I'm still I shake my head when I see people have taken like 2 weeks off on a trail, because I don't see how you can do that and be able to finish the entire trail, but maybe they're just hiking faster. As far as things that did not work, really the only regret I have is around shoes. Quite frankly, I have problematic feet, so there isn't a whole hell of a lot I can do. I was in the Ultra Olympuses, which had worked well for me for the entire Key West thing, relatively well. And that worked until I got into basically where Butte and Anaconda come back together. And then at the like 500-600 mile mark, that's where I started to have problems again. And there were weird problems. Nobody has taken a look at what was going on with my feet and going, oh yeah, it's obviously this. So there's that aspect of the shoes. And then there's just the fact that the Ultra quality has been crap with the later editions of the Lone Peaks and the Olympuses. The Olympuses fit me better than anything else. But when the shoe is falling apart after 200 miles, that is a major problem when I'm trying to do some sustained thing over, X thousands of miles. My current solution has been to switch to Topo Ultra Venture Pros. They work okay. They're a little narrower than the Ultras. At least for the moment, they seem to be a little more durable, but we'll see when I get out there this year. Speaking of this year, so what is next? Basically, I am back to teach a wilderness class. Once that finishes in mid-March, I'm back to teach the Sierra Club Wilderness Travel course. Once that finishes in March, I am on the move, and I will be on the move all summer. Plan as we have it now, other than some little warm-up things in between the classes, is on March 18th, I am going to start the Arizona Trail. After that, like I said, June 5th, Jen and I go up to Lake Itasca and we start paddling the Mississippi. We have bought a boat up there, a used one. We're going to paddle all the way down to the ocean, aim to finish before her summer is over, so it will be massatators all the way. Get to the bottom, she flies back, I sell the boat, and then I go back to Colorado because I got unfinished business on the Continental Divide Trail. Now, I've been asked quite a bit what I'm going to do, and when I was doing the PCT and the AT, I always said if I didn't finish for some reason, I would have started from the get-go. I thought about it with the CDT, but I'm going to continue from a little before where I got off. Now, the reason is, I'm really, really happy with the kind of like epic experiences on the north end. There's not much I feel could have gone better. So trying to redo that, there's always the chance that, you're going to fail at the same point. And like I said, I do think that southbound is the better way to do the CDT. That was the traditional way to do end-to-end. I don't really want to, I don't feel good about a northbound attempt and being able to do the entire thing. I feel like that's why so many people have to do Super Butte or other big shortcuts. The other thing is I had promised Jen that we were going to paddle the Mississippi. I didn't want to put that off for another year because we've got other plans. So looking at all that, I kind of decided, okay, it makes sense to continue from where I stopped. However, I don't want to start right where I stopped. I would rather start from where I feel like I had to make compromises. Basically, around Winter Park when I came down sick, that's where I went from doing the red line to having to do things like the Silverthorn Alt. So I'd like to go back there and be able to go over like Grays and Torreys, things like that, and do the red line through there. Now, starting from 0 and going straight up to 14 with all my stuff, because I'm not going to slack pack over those. Why would I bother? That would be kind of difficult. So what I set on is I'm going to go back to Grand Lake. If I start from there, I basically have a flat-ish area for a while so I can kind of ramp up. And then when I get to Winter Park area, hopefully I will be firing on all cylinders. And hopefully I can avoid having to stop anywhere in the Winter Park area because I am so sick of that area. So I don't have a specific start date, but basically end of August should be when we wrap up the Mississippi. I'm going to have to sell the boat, deal with whatever. I don't know what the exact timing is when Jen's going to have to, are we going to be able to finish everything and sell the boat before Jen leaves, or will I need to hang around and deal with stuff afterwards? So it's end of August, early September is when I will be headed up to Grand Lake, and the goal is to finish the CDT basically before winter makes it impassable. I should have more time than I had last year. Should be able to do the San Juans. Oh, the other thing with starting at Grand Lake is that means I can do the Rocky Mountain National Park loop that I skipped because it's really hard to do while you're on trail without burning extra days. So I think I'll probably start there, get the bear can permit, do that loop, continue on. Just have to finish by December because then I have to come back, get set up, do the wilderness class yet again. That takes care of the year 2023. I am already looking forward to 2024. While I was in Colorado, I ran into a couple of people who were doing the American Discovery Trail, and I've started to look more into that. At this point, I've bought the data for that, and it's looking like 2024, unless something goes majorly wrong, it is going to be an eastbound attempt of the American Discovery Trail, starting from San Francisco, taking the southern route, because the middle, there's a northern and a southern route. Southern route goes by my parents. Why would not walk from the West Coast to say hi to them, and continue out east. The only goal there is I have to finish by December because I have to get back for the wilderness class the following year. That is going to be a challenge. It's about 5,000 miles. It's kind of similar to the Eastern Continental Trail that I did before, but the weather window on this is a lot harder with the Eastern Continental Trail. Since I was starting at Key West, you're basically in the tropics, so I got to avoid winter. Here, 250 miles into the trail, I have to cross the Sierra. And there are trade-offs, drawbacks, and dangers on that, trying to do that too early. So I'm currently looking at that and talking to the American Discovery people. So yeah, I think this is going to be interesting, and I like these trails that so few people have done. So that'll take care of 2024, and beyond that, who the heck knows? I've got so many plans, and basically I feel like so little time. North Country Trail is, as far as like penciling things in, I'm kind of thinking I may try that in 2025. I've also promised Jen that we're going to do the Pacific Northwest Trail because she really likes that area of the country and wasn't able to do the northern end of the PCT with me. We have more things we want to do international than we have monetary ability right now. I'd love to do the Te Aurora. That requires Jen taking some time off work, which is kind of difficult with our setup. I'd also like to do the Bibblebum, the parts of the IAT I wasn't able to do. Hell, I want to go back to Prince Edward Island and do the, island walk around instead of my little IAT route straight through. Not to mention, like, Newfoundland I was really excited to do and couldn't. So yeah, I'm not going to run out of things to do anytime soon. So yeah, that is about it for the Continental Divide Trail 2022. I am bummed that I wasn't able to do the entire thing in one season. If nothing else, it would have been a lot cleaner because, after I finish it off this year, I'm going to have to say, Triple Crown was like 2020 to 2023 when I was hiking back to back to back, but that's just my own neurosis. Again, looking back at last summer, other than getting sick and that, I really enjoyed the experience, and it was about everything I could have asked for from doing the CDT.